I was at the Darden School of Business when they launched their incubator lab for entrepreneurs. And, this is one of the top business schools in the country, MBA program. And, I was there, doing some things, and they were talking to me about my background. They're like, well, how did you start 12 different companies? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're like, well, how do you start 12 different companies? I said, well, now what you teach here? They said, no, this is where people come and we just support, ideas and this and that. We don't actually help them start. They've already got a business, So I said, well, it starts with the idea. You put it down on paper. What is the concept? Who's your market? How are you going to implement it? How are you going to take action on it? And then you go do it. So literally that's where it starts.
Instead of talking about technical know-how in each episode, instead we'll be taking a mental approach. We'll be talking about building relationships, building trust, and how to be our best selves when we're out in the field doing deals. Today, I'm proud to welcome Greg Dickerson, a serial entrepreneur, real estate developer, coach, and mentor. He's bought, developed, and sold over $250 million in real estate, built and renovated hundreds of custom homes and commercial buildings, and developed residential and mixed-use subdivisions, and started 12 different companies from the ground up. Greg coaches, mentors some of the top entrepreneurs and real estate investors around the world. Let's welcome Greg Dickerson. Greg, welcome to the show.
Hey, Sean, thanks for having me.
All right. The 30,000 foot overview of how you kind of just got started in this stuff.
Yeah. Natural born entrepreneur, started as a kid, and, people can go to my YouTube channel and hear the whole backstory. But, as a kid, I was, cutting grass, raking leaves, washing cars, doing whatever I could to make money. And this is like, early elementary school years. And I had a few jobs through my high school years, went in the Navy right out of high school. After I got out of the Navy, I always had a construction business on the side. I worked restaurants, during the day and at night. And then when I wasn't in restaurants, I was doing my own little business on the side, doing construction. I had some skills from, in construction, doing odd jobs and things like that. So basically, long story short, I started my entrepreneurial journey in 1997 after working in the restaurant industry for a few years after the military, and built that little remodeling handyman company. Took it from basically zero, no money, no credit, no backing of any kind, no entrepreneurs, no support, no network. Took that from 0 to 30 million in a 7-year period, exited that company, sold it. And along the way, I learned how to invest in and develop real estate. So I poured everything, all of my profits from that company and then 12 other companies that I started along the way and exited. I used all the cash flow to invest in real estate and kind of build my real estate development arm along the way. And that was from 97 to 2005. And then after 2005, I just became a full-time investor developer. So I'm a serial entrepreneur, real estate developer, investor. And, that's basically what I do today, equity capital and real estate development.
I love it. One of the things that stood out to me when I was listening to you on another podcast, I think it might've been on your show, is you always talk about how you're a seeker of wisdom. And that's a great way to approach to learn from other mentors and people that are out there. How did you quickly learn from some people that were where you wanted to be early on, let's say?
So number one is approaching everything from, the mindset of a beginner, being a seeker of wisdom and asking good, intelligent questions and, digging deeper into concepts. So, I wouldn't just come up to somebody and say, hey, how did you do that? It would be like, I love what you do. I really admire what you have achieved in your life. How did you get to where you are? How did it start? So then they would, explain to me, and I would just ask questions, and a lot of the people that I did projects for early on in my building company career as a remodeling handyman guy, I was working for a lot of investors and developers, and I would just kind of ask them how they did what they did and, how they got to where they were. A lot of them started like me. They started as builders or investors or started in real estate. As brokers and then started investing and developing. So a lot of them did it the same way I did. The other thing is I poured into myself. So, I educated myself. I didn't go to college. I went in the Navy out of high school. I got some business training in the Navy. I got really great business training in corporate restaurant management. I worked for some, very big corporate restaurants and, they developed us as leaders, managers, delegators, motivators. So I was very fortunate in that I learned, that way. And then I studied other great leaders, read their stories, listened to them. But when it comes to the individual, it's really number one, humbling yourself, being a seeker of wisdom, because you can learn something from everybody. I don't care how advanced you are. I don't care how far along you are, how successful you are. every single person you meet, you can learn something from. They've got some sort of a unique experience, unique perspective, unique skill set. They have something you don't have somewhere that they can offer. So every encounter, every environment, every situation, I approach it from the mindset of a beginner, from a mindset of what can I learn from this person, this conversation, this situation, this environment, this meeting, this seminar, this whatever, movies, whatever it is. Every single situation, I'm just waiting for that nugget. It's just kind of the way I'm wired.
And that's interesting because we're talking about the psychology of commercial real estate. One of the things you really is approaching things from that opportunity perspective. Mm-hmm. I think about how you talked about I'm trying to think of the name of the steakhouse, but you were with the chain of steakhouses.
Yeah, Lone Star Steakhouses.
Lone Star Steakhouse. When you were there, I'm sure you approached it from also that you looked like a bigger picture. It wasn't just in the management particular situation you were. I'm sure the things you learned there maybe helped you in knowing what were the KPIs for a business like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So we were all about the numbers, and that was one of the reasons that company was one of the most successful restaurant chains in history. We had the highest profit margin of any restaurant chain ever in the history of restaurants. So we were all about the numbers. So we drilled it down in terms of food cost, labor cost, all the controllables. We budgeted our expenses. We had regular meetings. We measured our performance. We managed our performance and the outcome. So we didn't just write a schedule. We budgeted it. We said we have $500 to spend, in the kitchen this week, and we would budget those hours out or whatever it was, and by each position. So it was really management by the numbers, and then leading, delegating, motivating. So we had weekly meetings where we trained ourselves and worked with each other as managers in all of our departments, and we did inventory every week in the restaurant. So we knew exactly what our food cost was. So in the restaurant industry, it's all about food and labor. Those are your two biggest costs in a restaurant, behind your rent and all that. But even then, food and labor are your two biggest costs. And you have to really manage what those are controllables. So you have to manage your controllables. You have to budget for them. You have to track it. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So it's all about, looking at the information and understanding what the information means. I knew exactly how much of every item on the menu we sold. I knew exactly what our labor hours were. I knew exactly how much beer, wine, and liquor we sold. I know exactly how many people came in through the door, what the guest check average was, all of that. So that transcends into any business, anywhere, doesn't matter what it is. It's all about the numbers, KPIs, and the metrics that make up those KPIs.
That's interesting too, because how did you end up applying that to your life? Because I'm thinking you're in a management position, you leave that role, and I think create your own restaurants, and then also get into construction. So that's it's not completely different, because I know, they open up new restaurants and that there's a construction phase of that. But how do you break into that? And that's just starting with an idea that I'm interested in this and I want to create something.
So number one, management, leading, delegating, motivating is the same across any industry. People are people, doesn't matter what industry you're in. So it's number one, it's all about people. So the business, my philosophy of business is people, operations, profit. Okay. Like a lot of people know Marcus Lemonis, he talks about people, process, profit. I use operations instead of process, because that's everything in the operations of a business. Any business is income and expenses, whether it's a business, whether it's a real estate deal, doesn't matter. It's all about income and expenses. And when you talk about income, you have different revenue centers. And then when you talk about expenses, you have fixed costs, you have controllables, your fixed costs, and you have your controllable costs, and then you have your variable costs. So it's understanding, where does your income come from? How much can you derive? And then what are your expenses? How do you control them? You have your fixed expenses you can't do anything about. Then you have your controllables, your variable expenses. That's what you can control. And then you have, waste. So in any business, slippage, waste, those are your biggest issues that you have to control. So I just kind of applied those two skills. And what's really interesting is construction, especially building buildings. It's all about line items, budgets, controllable costs, waste, slippage, those types of things, just like a restaurant. So when you're breaking down the budget, whether it's an income producing property or a development property, you have all your little line items, all your little expenses, and it's all about bringing that project in on time and on budget. Just like a restaurant, we budgeted our labor, we budgeted our food, based on a certain amount of sales we expected to do. So same kind of thing. We would bring that restaurant in budget every single week, and it was all about exceeding, our profit goals every week. And we bonused our people based on, exceeding those goals. Same thing in a building company. We had those goals for a job. It had to be done in a certain amount of time under budget, and I would bonus people based on those results. So it transferred over really well.
I love that, because I think you're right. There's a universal skill set of leadership that can be applied to everything. And you were able to build that in the Navy, because they have some of the best training systems in the world. So you're able to build from there and then go into the restaurant industry and then segue that into construction as well, as far as leading and delegating and all of that. And one of the things that I connect with you on is that we're big fans of Zig Ziglar. And I remember him saying, you can have everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want, whether it's investors, whether it's your team, right? You're always focused. And I think you have a quote too about it's the people first. Like if you invest in the people first.
Yeah, it's all of it. So what I talk about is not working on the business instead of in the business. You work on the people in your business so they build the business for you. So for me, it's developing your most valuable asset, your most valuable resource in any business is your people. So develop your people, and then they do everything else takes care of itself, and they develop the business for you. Yeah, I love Zig Ziglar. He had a lot of stuff. That was one. The other one is the stinking thinking, right? So it goes back to mindset. Zig always talked about get rid of that stinking thinking. You need a checkup from the neck up. He's awesome. If y'all haven't, whoever's listening, if you don't know Zig Ziglar, you need to go listen to Zig Ziglar and read his books. He's awesome. But one of the things you hit on, military. So the military is all about systems. So you said systems for training. They're all about systems, period. So what I learned from the military, number one, was systems, standard operating procedures, redundancy, preventative maintenance. So we had all these systems in the military that, from the chain of command. Now that was a top-down system, and in corporate America, it's a bottom-up system. You lead from the bottom by serving the organization, because the leader has to give the organization everything they need to be successful. In the military, the orders come down from the top, but our systems are bottom up. So that taught me discipline, execution, systems, things like that. Vision is one thing. Ideas are one thing. Execution is everything. So it all boils down to execution, and you need those systems, those redundancies, and the discipline to execute on the vision, on the idea.
And I'd like to talk about execution right now, because I feel like that's something that is the X factor in a lot of different people's success stories. Because if you think about it, there's so many great ideas, and a lot of us have them, but we don't necessarily take action. So what you could do now. So how does someone that's listening from a mental perspective try to approach it from more of like, hey, they've got this idea of they want to be an investor, or they want to do some big things in real estate. How do they translate that into action in the world versus just an idea?
Yeah. Anything, lose weight, whatever, change your life in any way, it takes action. So, I'm just one of those guys, I'm a doer. So if there's an idea, like if you and I are talking about this idea and we want to create this app and it sounds great and we know it'll work, people do that, right? They get all excited. They talk about, they have this idea, or like, maybe we want to lose weight. You're overweight. I'm overweight. We're drinkers, whatever. And we're sitting in the bar and we're like, you know what? We need to quit this. We need to get in shape, man. It would be great if I could fit in those clothes. And you get all excited, but then you go home and you go back to the bar the next day and you don't do anything about it. Or you have this great idea and you go home, you go to bed, you wake up, that was stupid. That'll never work. The difference is I go out and I do it. So if you and I have this idea, I'm like, let's go. Next thing you know, we're putting the business plan down. Next thing you know, we're filing an LLC. We're setting up a bank account. We're going out, we're finding developers, app developers, So, that's literally what it is. So a business plan, a lot of people get caught up in that. I got to create this business plan. It has to be all these different, pages. Business plan is one page. What's your idea? What's your market? How are you going to implement it? How are you going to execute it? And then, you just go. It's really simple. You do a one-page executive summary of the idea. It needs to be easily understood. For most businesses. Now, there are some businesses that are a lot more complicated, obviously, but the nature of a business is very simple. It's the idea, the faith in it, and the means to implement it. That's how success proceeds. So the biggest difference is just believing, knowing that I can do it, knowing that no matter what, I can do it, I can take the action and get it done. And then, going out and taking action. And, it's funny, I was at the Darden School of Business when they launched their incubator lab for entrepreneurs. And, this is one of the top business schools in the country, MBA program. And, I was there, doing some things, and they were talking to me about my background. They're like, well, how did you start 12 different companies? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're like, well, how do you start 12 different companies? I said, well, isn't that what you teach here? They said, no, this is where people come and we just support, ideas and this and that. And We don't actually help them start. They've already got a business, And then, so I said, well, starts with the idea. You put it down on paper. What is the concept? Who's your market? How are you going to implement it? How are you going to take action on it? And then you go do it. So literally that's where it starts. You set up the LLC, you open the bank account, and then you do whatever it is you got to do. You go out and get customers, you go out and, make your product, you do whatever. So that's how it starts. And a lot of people get hung up in the big picture. They see this big vision and they're like, I can never get there. Whereas the big vision, Jeff Bezos with Amazon started with one book in an envelope that he packaged and shipped from his garage. And one became two became 10, 10 became 1,000. And then he got a warehouse, and then he got, so that's how it happens. You just start. And that's Zig Ziglar. Another one that Zig Ziglar says, you don't have to get it right. You just got to get it going. So that's really it. Just get it going, just get started, but do it right. Have a plan, know who your market is, make sure that you have an idea that's going to work, and then just do it.
I think that's a big part too, is sort of the initial inertia of just trying to get started with something. There's that little resistance initially. And so what interests me is you talked about your belief in the idea. How do you end up getting a really strong belief in idea? Do you do affirmations, or there's some type of process, or do you find that it's based on your previous success? You've taken action, you've succeeded, and now you have that self-confidence in ideas to make them happen.
So at a high level, number one, you do your market research. You make sure there's a market for what you want. So you don't go try to create a market. Now, there are places for that with the iPhone and with, some of the iconic products we have of this age, Microsoft, things like that. But in the general sense, for most people that are entrepreneurial, find a need and fill it. Find a problem. Where there's a problem, there's an opportunity. I started my first company. I was going to open a restaurant. I got into construction instead. I wanted to get some work done at my house. I was trying to get an addition built on my house, and I was calling contractors. Nobody would return a phone call. I mean, I would talk to, call 20, 30 people. Nobody would call you back for anything, landscaping, an addition on my house, anything you needed done, because everybody was so busy, just kind of like it is right now. They couldn't even return a phone call. Where there's a problem, there's an opportunity. So I started talking to my neighbors, and they said, oh yeah, man, if you just return a phone call and show up, you'll have all the work you'll ever need. That's when I started my first company, was to solve a problem. There was not enough good remodeling contractors, handyman contractors in our area. So that turned into hundreds of millions of dollars worth of business, over a 7-year period, because I was solving a problem. So let's take it down to a much lower level. Okay. If a kid wants to do a lemonade stand, do you think they sit there and get all hung up on, well, gosh, I got to have the mix, then I got to have glasses, then I got to have a table, then I got to go out and find customers. I don't know if this is going to work. No, what do they do? I want to go sell lemonade. They make some lemonade, they go set a stand up, and they start selling it because they know there's a market for it. It's really that simple. If there's a market, I know I can sell it. So I just go for it. Now, from an iconic level of, light world changing products, like an Elon Musk, that's a little different level of belief, right? So this guy's taking rocket ships to the moon. So what he does and what I did when I grew my company, I'd never built a multi-million-dollar house from the ground up. In fact, when I started building custom homes, I'd never built a house. I was a remodeling guy. So what I do, I went and found great people that were working for some of the biggest and best companies there that were doing what I wanted to do. And I went and hired their best people. There was a story out today that Stripe just hired the CFO from, was it GM or something? I can't remember, but Stripe just hired a top CFO to come into their organization that they took away from another company. People hire Jeff Bezos's best people to build their companies. So that's how you grow great companies. When you're not experienced and you don't know what you're doing, you borrow belief and confirmation from those that have already done what you want to do. You bring them in and let them build the organization for you.
No, that's great. I mean, one of the things that attracts me to what you're talking about as well is the whole idea of like building really a market, or finding out from the market, letting them speak for what is needed versus you deciding that ahead of time. And a lot of people are completely backward in that they're developing a business and then want to market it when they don't even know if there's a market for it. So I think that's a big takeaway that people can start doing, no matter what it is, or no matter what you want to start, is finding that need, right? And doing that market research.
Yeah, yeah. And there are those opportunities, like Facebook. There was no market for Facebook, right? But there was a social, market, TikTok. There was no market for a TikTok. So, so there are some things that you can create a market for, but the proof of concept of the social aspect of these things, that is a proven thing. They're just providing a different mechanism, to tap into a social network. So there's a little bit of that. And, we did have mobile phones when, Steve Jobs did the iPhone. Obviously his first thing was the iPod, revolutionizing music, when he stood up on stage and said, 100 songs in your pocket, Yeah. Wow. So he didn't create the market for music. He just created a new way. So that's what a lot of people miss. A lot of people rack their brain trying to come up with the next greatest thing, when all you have to do is look inside an existing industry and how can you serve that market better, like the iPod, 100 songs in your pocket, or like the Apple iPhone, and everything that's a computer in your pocket, or, like I did, nobody was answering the phone, very simple, so where there's an opportunity, where there's a problem, there's an opportunity.
The other thing I notice about you, it seems like you're very minimalistic, or you make it very simple. Like when you, because I even noticed that your YouTube videos are about 3 minutes or 4 minutes. And I don't know if that's by design, but I know that it doesn't take, sometimes, I know you say it's like, it could be just one idea that you're able to run with and implement, and it could be a game changer for everything and really be a success for you. What do you say to people that are listening that are distracted and just overwhelmed by the information that we've got access to nowadays? Because we have so much internet and we have so many opportunities everywhere. And then you just break down because you don't know what to do. And then you're just back to square one because you're just overwhelmed. I don't know how you've been able to deal with that in that more now mentality.
Yeah. So because I know what I know and I keep it simple. So number one, I have no backlog in my life. I take care of everything as it comes, when it comes. If it's an email, I either respond to it, file it, or delete it, so I deal with it right there. I don't put off tomorrow anything. I make sure that everything that's on my desk is cleared before the end of the day. And if there's something I have to do tomorrow, it's on my list for tomorrow and it's out of my head. So I have a very strong sense of urgency. The best time to take care of anything is right now. And that's the way I operate, very immediate. And I keep it simple. I don't overcomplicate it. And, that's how our educational system is built. So college is an institution of overcomplication. So the top business schools, the top universities in the country, generate people that overcomplicate things. And, you can go hire the top people, smartest people from Harvard and Stanford and Yale and, Darden and all these wonderful institutions, and bring them together and try to take the top idea from all these people to solve a problem. And it's going to fail every time because they overcomplicate it. They make it too hard. Yes, my YouTube channel is by design. I have no intro. I have no outro. I don't even really do thumbnails. It's just clean, simple, very to the point ideas and concepts that you can listen to, you understand it, you grasp it. And that's kind of a gifting I have, is taking very high level, complicated concepts, boiling them down into 1 or 2 sentences or 1 or 2 minutes, where people are like, dang, I can take that and go make $1 million with it. And there are videos that I have out there for free that you can watch and go make $1 million with. The problem is there's so much out there. There's so much noise, and there's so many great marketers that tell you, man, the one thing you need to know, or these are the 3 things that you have to do. And they'll have this 30-minute webinar talking about these 3 things, but they never tell you what the 3 things are, so marketing. People are like, I got, and there's so many of those. There's nothing new under the sun. There is no secret. There is no 3 things. It's income, expenses, leadership, management, delegating, motivating. Do it now. Don't put off today, or tomorrow what you can do today. It's very simple. You have vision, you have an idea, you got to have faith, you have to have a way to implement it, and you get out and you just get started. So for me, I can look through the noise because I know it's just noise. I know it's just marketing, and I've been around it long enough and I've studied long enough to where if you look at all of these new books, these new ideas, these new concepts, you can trace them all back, to hundreds of years ago, even to the Bible. If you read Proverbs in the Bible, a lot of the greatest business concepts come from there, in terms of the wisdom of Proverbs and the wisdom of the Bible. When it comes to real estate, there's nothing new in real estate. That it's property, right? It's income and expenses. It's, you buy low, you sell high, so There are no tricks or secrets or anything like that. It's consistent action. It's educating yourself. It's understanding the business, understanding the metrics, the KPIs, and understanding how to be a leader, delegate, or motivator if you're trying to grow and scale a company. So it's keep it simple, streamline, and efficient. And that's the other thing. So, my other gifting is efficiency. I have the ability to come in and make very complicated things very efficient and find the least path of resistance. So my goal in business is to make the most amount of profit in the least amount of time with the least amount of energy and effort possible. So that's how I approach everything, is I try to understand it first and then, make it as efficient as possible, systemize everything you can, outsource and delegate, and just forget all the noise.
Was there a deal that you did that you didn't think in the beginning might be possible? You were able to change that around, or you were able to make it happen from the idea that anything's possible, and you were able to just implement and make this deal happen when maybe everything was against you, or you didn't really think it would be possible in the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of those, but the first one was a lot flip. So I'd owned houses. I didn't know that real estate investing was a thing. I didn't even know you could flip. So I had a real estate agent that came to me and said, hey, there's a slot over here that we can buy. My dad has a client that'll pay us 50 grand more. We can buy it for 100. We can sell it to them for 150. You put up the money, I'll do everything else, and we'll split the profit. And I'm like, you can do that? And he's like, yeah. So, okay, we did it. And then 30 days later, we had 15, 25 grand a piece, whatever it was, off of $100,000 cash outlay that I put up. And I was like, man, I had no clue. Yeah. All right. So what that triggered for me, and I just started building houses at this stage, was, wait a minute, there's value in this dirt. So, I went around and started tying lots up and then flipping those to my investors that were buying these properties. These were like a resort area where I was building big beach houses. So I'd make a spread on the land and then I would build them a house. So that launched a whole complete business model that turned into, 150 some $million over a 5 to 7 year period, just with doing that little business model alone. So, I mean, all it takes is one little idea and it could just change everything.
And by doing that deal, it kind of opened up the possibility in your mind of what is out there and what you can do in a matter of weeks or a very short period of time. And then when you started seeing the opportunities around you, things opened up in a sense, right?
Yeah. And it's funny, we all have blind spots. So, we all can't see what we can't see. And then sometimes you got to have somebody else come in that can see what you can't, to open your mind up. And, if you have an existing business or if you're just getting started, or like me, I was building and doing all these things, but I couldn't see that opportunity. Somebody came in, one idea, bam, and off to the races, and it turned into hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's kind of how it works. Even in the biggest of companies, people are running these companies. I mean, let's take GM for an example, the company, iconic company, Sears, JCPenney, whatever, going bankrupt. They've got sharp MBA grad, very educated, experienced people running those companies. But they're not running them like entrepreneurs, like business owners. They're running them like executives, that have no stake in the game. Yeah. So they have blind spots, whereas an entrepreneur could come in and step into those companies and fix them in a heartbeat.
Right. You're coming from a fresh perspective, and you're not looking at it in the sense of the role you're in or any type of confines of being in an organization. I could see that. To me, urgency is huge. I mean, that's sometimes a big differentiator between someone that really implements and someone that doesn't. It seems early on you had that. I know you talk about how you go, to different doors in the neighborhood and ask, hey, is there anything I could do for some money? Because I'll make it happen. I'll do it. Just getting started. How does someone develop that in themselves? Or do you find like you got to get yourselves in those pressure situations?
You got to have it. So you either have initiative or you don't. You're either a self-starter or you're not. So I was just born that way. I had initiative. I was a self-starter. And then, of course, it didn't hurt that I had a dad that if I wanted something, he said, you want it? You go earn money and pay for it. I'm not, because we didn't have a lot of money. So part necessity, part teaching me lessons. So, I was very fortunate to learn at a very young age. And I'm talking, 7, 8 years old, that if I wanted something, I had to go create the money to get it. So I learned how to create money out of nothing. Now, that was a very basic level where it was just me, trading my time for dollars, but that was scalable because when I had a lot of work, I would hire my friends and they would come with me to rake yards or whatever. And I'd get $20 and I'd pay them $5, and we could do twice as many yards. So I learned at a very young age how to leverage. I learned the cost of doing business because I had to pay my dad for renting his equipment. I had to pay for the gas and the oil and maintenance of the lawnmower. I had to pay him a percentage of all of my profits for using his equipment until I could buy my own, and then I didn't have to pay him. And that's what he taught me. Hey, you use my equipment, you pay for it. You don't want to pay me, go buy your own.
Yeah, that's
So
good. I mean, it's tough love, but at least it was able to set you on that track, that trajectory of taking action,
yeah.
responsibility for making things happen.
And see and that was in the day that if you wanted something, you had to go earn it. So a lot of young people today, in this world, and even when I was coming up, didn't have to earn anything. It was all given to them. So, the question is, are you born with the initiative or is it built into you? That I don't know the answer to that. And I'm sure there's been studies and there's probably a lot of science behind it, and you can tell when somebody has initiative, when they're diligent, when they have a sense of urgency, and when they don't. And whenever I've hired in any of my organizations, the first thing I list, you must be a self-starter, have a strong sense of urgency, because the last thing I want is somebody coming to me, asking me a question they could have easily found the answer to. I don't need that individual. That's a waste of my time. With Google today and the stuff that's out there, you can get the answer to almost any question in these forums and all over the place where people will ask questions that they can easily find the answer to. And it's like, you just hit Google.
Is there a point that you decide that? Because sometimes people just get caught up in the pros, the cons, just decision making, and they don't really take action.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, you can list the pros, decision making process. And this goes back to Benjamin Franklin, right? So the old list of, put down the pros, put down the cons, and if the pros outweigh the cons, go. So at that point, you just either go or you don't. So for a lot of people, they're afraid to make a decision because they're afraid of the potential outcome if they fail. So what I would say is, when you're listing your pros and cons, don't forget to list, well, what's the worst thing that could happen if and when you do fail? Because you will. Ultimately, it's something somewhere along the line. You're going to make a bad decision. We make them every day. You're going to fail. We do every day. So at the end of the day, when you look at a business, number one, you got to be able to calculate the risk. That's where a lot of people miss. They'll put pros, they'll put cons, but they don't accurately calculate the downside and then make sure that they can withstand whatever that is. So if it's humiliation, if it's dollars, loss, whatever that is, make sure that you can survive the downside if and when that thing does go wrong. And if you can, then go. So that's making a good calculated decision. Now, a lot of my entrepreneurial decisions, I didn't even go that detailed. When I started my first company, I just wanted to do my own thing. And I just, it started with one little deck job and then a little bit of trim and then this and that. And I started running ads and I started hiring people. So, I had a little business plan and I was running my numbers and my break even. I knew I had to bring in so many sales, but, I didn't look at the downside, and for me, worst case scenario was, well, if it didn't work, you just go back and get a job. So for a lot of people out there, especially educated people that can get great jobs with six-figure salaries, your worst case scenario is it doesn't work and you just get a job and then, you restart again another day.
When you're talking about, you're weighing the pros and cons and then go, it seems like when you say that, it gives you that flow state. You seem like someone that really enjoys that process of creating. Do you find that that's your sweet spot, the thing you most enjoy?
Yeah, I'm very creative. I love the startup. I don't like to run it. I like to get it up and going. And once it's up and going, I like to turn it over and let somebody else. But yeah, I love the creative part, the business planning, the action, getting it up, the marketing, the promotion, the ideas, that it's very creative. Entrepreneurship is very creative. And I like to create something out of nothing. To me, that's the true definition of entrepreneurship, creating something out of nothing to solve problems for the greater good.
That's amazing. So I guess to be micro on it, when you're going through your day, do you find you have your to-do list? What works for you? As far as a daily implementation methodology to hey, let's make this happen.
Yeah, I'm very organized. So I've got everything in my calendar. And, back in the day before all that, it was the Franklin Covey day planner. So I used that system. So I had a list of everything that, that I was doing and I still do now. If it's a lot, I've got a list of everything that needs to be done. The appointments are set. And then I just go and I knock them out and then I field whatever comes in. The difference is I don't table anything. If it's immediately answerable, I take care of it. Emails come in, I take care of them right away. Like you emailed me about this interview. I could have put it off, waited, whatever, but no, I was in between. I just knocked it out. So I go about my day very deliberately, very, methodically, and I have a list for everything. So everything is written down. So it's not up here. I don't have to worry about what's up here. It's written down. So every single day before I go to bed, I know exactly what I got to do tomorrow and when. Every day when I wake up, it's not the first thing I do, but, I look at it at some point in the morning. So I know exactly what I have to do. And then things move, change, whatever. I just move them and change them and, deal with it. So that's really it. The other thing is I'm a master delegator. So anything that I don't like to do, I'm not good at doing or don't have to do, I delegate out to others. So I focus on, it's the whole 80-20 principle. You focus on, 20% that produces 80%. Well, I take that 20% and I do the 80-20 again. And I do it as many times as I need to do it to drill it down to the one thing, because life is short. Business is fast. The world is changing. If you want to grow, scale, and, take advantage of opportunity, you got to find the one thing, focus 100% on that, outsource and delegate everything else. So that helps me to not have any backlog in my life. And when I'm delegating and outsourcing, I have great people and I expect them to solve their own problems. And again, I give them everything they need to do it: tools, training, systems, and support, and clear direction, exactly what I expected when. So I don't just send, hey, go schedule this meeting for me tomorrow. I've got a meeting, at 2:00 at the Boar's Head, tomorrow to do. I give very deliberate direction in terms of what I want done and when. Hey, make a copy of this report for me. Make a copy, make 10 copies of this report, have it back to me by tomorrow at 5:00, so you give very strict deadlines and deliberate, calls to action in terms of what you want and when, so that your people around you know what you expect and know what they should be doing. Just like job descriptions, whenever I brought somebody in, they had a clear defined role of everything they were supposed to do that was a job description. And then the very last item was anything and everything else you could do to contribute to the success of everybody else around you and the organization and community as a whole. So they had very detailed, deliberate things they were supposed to do in their job. But then at the bottom, it was anything and everything, whatever it takes, for us to be successful, for excellence of execution, because that's where it's at in business.
So just talking about you, we're almost done. The last thing I'd like to ask you, based on what you've talked about, one of the things I loved you mentioned was opportunity, seeing opportunity. And it's almost, that seems like a pervasive theme for you, like just seeing opportunity maybe where others don't.
Probably being able to uncover value in the opportunities, because a lot of people see opportunities, but they don't act on it. So number one, it's taking action. It's not being afraid to take action. In real estate, it's doing that real estate deal. A lot of people can understand a good real estate deal. They can uncover the opportunity. They can reveal the value, but they won't write the offer, So it's taking the action. So seeing it is one thing, but acting on it is another. So I write the offer, I act on it, and just move on it. So that's really the difference. I'm just kind of wired that way. I'm just a doer. If you ask people about me, he gets things done. He makes things happen, gets things done.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because this whole podcast is about the psychology and you're more of a doer, but it's all about the psychology, because think about it, in order for you to create that, you had to have that mental perspective. Not only that, by being in action, it actually changes your mental perspective. By making all of those deals, by just facing challenges or struggles or times that you failed, I know that has morphed and changed the way you perceive the world.
It's completely psychological. So it's all mindset. It all starts there. So it's certainty. I know exactly that I can do it. So it's confidence, and that's built through taking action and doing and failing and getting up and moving forward and keeping going. So it is a mindset. So, like a lot of people ask me, what's your routine? What's your ritual? How do you start your day? I don't have a routine or a ritual. I don't have anything that I have to do to keep me motivated. I'm naturally motivated because I love what I do. I love helping people. I love solving problems. I love creating opportunities. I love to create. And, the first time I stepped out on my own was probably a little, when I look back on it, it might've been a little scary, or whatever. But once you take that step, then it gets easier each time to take that step. Now, as you grow and as you become more aware and your ideas get bigger, your challenges get bigger. But again, that's where opportunities are created in solving problems and embracing challenges. That's what they say. That's why we get the big bucks, right? Because we take on the challenge, we solve big problems. The bigger problem you solve, the bigger opportunity there is, the bigger payday there is around it from a vocational standpoint. It's not always about the money in terms of solving problems and creating opportunities, but in business, it's about dollars, right? It's income and expenses. So the bigger the change, the bigger the opportunity, the bigger the risk, usually the bigger the reward.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. The value you offer the marketplace. I remember Jim Rohn, one of the things I remember him saying was that someone was complaining about working at a company. Oh, they don't pay anything here. But actually, he's like, well, do you know they actually do pay people a ton more than you're getting paid? You're just not the person that's offering the value. The CEO is getting paid millions of dollars. You just are, it's what you're offering. It's what you're offering the marketplace. So
yeah, another Zig Ziglar, don't ask to get paid more for what you do until you do more than you're getting paid to do already.
Right. That's right on. Exactly. It's the value, man. It's going out there and doing that.
Yeah. A lot of people work in a company and they come and they ask for a raise. And, in my company, people, I've been here 6 months or I've been here a year. It's time for a raise. Now, usually I would reward people along the way as they grew and improved their skill sets. But if anybody ever came to me and said, I've been here long enough, I feel like I deserve a raise, I'd say, why? Well, I've been here for 6 months. I said, okay, what are you doing different today than you did 6 months ago when you started? Well, nothing, but, I show up, I'm like, well, then go build, do something to increase your value here at the company. When you ask for a raise, so anybody listening that's in the workforce, if you want to get a raise, approach it from the standpoint of here's the value I can create for the company, and I would like to share in that value exchange. So, I know that I can do X, Y, and Z that's going to create ABC for the company in terms of revenues, profits, whatever, growth. And in exchange for that, I'd like to increase my salary or have a share in that upside. That will never get turned down.
Right. It's almost thinking of yourself as the CEO of me, that I am the person in charge. So how can people contact you if they're interested in getting in touch with you, and tell us a little bit about how they can reach you?
Yeah, gregdickerson.com. So all of my stuff's on there. I've got a YouTube channel, podcast. So my complete backstory is in different videos and interviews I've done there. And then, like you said, I share, little bits of wisdom and practical, tactical, techniques and advice in different areas and aspects of business. I've got different playlists. So gregdickerson.com. You can find my YouTube channel and podcast there.
I appreciate Greg coming on the show. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Commercial Real Estate Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe so you get all the latest episodes. Bye for now, and we'll see you next week.